T minus 50 seconds. T minus 40 seconds. T minus 30 seconds. T minus 20 seconds. Ten, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Own it, own it, own it, Kong. I own it. It did.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet.
Happy International Women's Day. Of course, we are also here for the Wednesday edition of WWT Live for Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Of course, we'll be talking some women's wrestling news today. We got a whole boatload of stories to get through, but of course, I am not alone. I am joined by Mr. Professor Gerard. How are you?
I am good. I'm good. Happy International Women's Day to you.
Yes, and to everybody here at WWT Live, of course, that's kind of our brand. That's our shtick. We are the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet, which
We are.
Of course, we're going to be starting with some women's wrestling news today. But Gerard, how you doing today? How's your week been going?
I'm okay. It's been a tough week, admittedly, but you know what? I'm here, so that's good.
And, I feel that. And the thing is that it's only Wednesday.
It is Wednesday. So, but we're always pushing for things to get better, and certainly that's the beauty of the world of pro wrestling. If for nothing else, it provides a great space of escape for us where we can live in somebody else's world and find great joy and laughter and all sorts of
most
of
the time. Some of the things today, didn't really bring a lot of joy for some of the people.
Well, this is true. It creates conversation. It does a whole lot of things.
It does provide us an escape, though, too. But as we said, it is International Women's Day. I wish, granted, this is likely a kayfabe storyline, but I knew you wanted to start with a big event / dramatic scene that unfolded last night on NXT after Roxanne Perez successfully defended and retained her NXT Women's Championship against the legendary Final Boss Meiko Satomura.
Absolutely. Last night was NXT Roadblock, the final kind of big ticket show en route to WrestleMania week, NXT Stand and Deliver, which will be WrestleMania Saturday. So it was a jam-packed show. Lots of things happened, but a lot of people are talking about this main event. The main event for the NXT Women's Championship, as you mentioned, Roxanne Perez versus Meiko Satomura. I said I wasn't going to mix that up, and then the spirit of Booker T found me. And so here's the deal. Like, the story coming into this was amazing. The two actually fought about 6 months ago. And Meiko, why am I doing this? Thank you, Booker T. Meiko won that match significantly, but obviously 6 months have passed. A lot has changed, and there have had some great training sessions and the like. Anyway, very physical match between these two, and it could have gone a lot of ways. It ended up with a big win there for Roxanne, who gave her all, an incredible match. And then at the end, she collapsed, and none of us really knew what was going on. And the stunned silence of the crowd, the announcers went silent. The refs were rushing people in, and they wanted the EMTs, and Booker T gets off of his headset, and all sorts of things are going down. It was a pretty serious situation. Many are saying that she's okay, but that was really more of a hearkening to the 1995-96 situation that happened with Shawn Michaels,
Yeah.
similarly passing out, which, let me just say that, if that is the case, this was so brilliant that, I mean, again, the internet didn't know what was going on. The fans didn't know what was going on. And if this is how this went down, absolutely brilliant. To me, the idea that in this last month or so, NXT has managed to relive two of the most iconic moments in Shawn Michaels' career is absolutely brilliant. And let's just point out, since it's International Women's Day, that women pulled them off both times. This is
did.
amazing. From the breakup of Toxic Attraction to this amazing moment, like, this is just, I one of the things that WWE has been in, certainly for this season, they have been in their bag when it comes to this road to WrestleMania. The last few years, the road to WrestleMania has been hit or miss,
Yeah.
and sometimes more miss than hit. But what we've got going on right now, between what we saw Monday night on Raw, what we saw last night on NXT, and we're just talking about the women's part. We didn't get into Shawn Michaels himself.
Yeah.
Like,
Before
I'm
we
here
get into more of it, just want to say hello to everybody in the chat. Ron, thank you for being here. Santana, I love your little icon in there. You need to tell me who made
Pretty
it. And if
awesome.
you did a great job. I want one.
Pretty
Ron,
awesome.
yeah, definitely. So they played, people didn't notice it at first, but it was pointed out on Twitter that they kind of let up they had some storyline arcs leading up to that, some small moments that if you paid attention, that they kind of foreshadowed to that moment of Roxanne passing out, because she had an interview like during the night before her match that, she'd been training with Mako Satomura. We've seen like the vignettes of it in past weeks, and she said that she really pushed herself in training with Mako because she's this big legend, and Mako has over 20 years of experience. So she said that she kind of pushed herself to the limit. And obviously that came into play later in her match with Mako. So it could be whether it was just, she was just surviving off of adrenaline. It took literally everything Roxanne had to defeat Mako. And because of that, it could have been, I don't know, they could say it's dehydration or something.
Or it could have been all those kicks to the head, right? Because she endured a lot.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of things that could have contributed to that, which makes it even better.
It would make sense for her to pass out because she literally pushed herself to the limit to defeat Mako. So that seems, at least to me, again, it hasn't been explained yet, but obviously I would assume appears that I hope it's just purely storyline. It seems as though it is, but it's funny that Shawn Michaels is booking Shawn Michaels. I'm not that that's a bad thing, but at first I was like, is she okay? But then I realized that, Booker got up, Shawn came out, all the theatrics. Yeah, this is likely all a part of Shawn's ploy. But yeah, Roxanne Perez retains. We don't know what happens. Stand and Deliver is coming up. There was a lot of women last night who said that they wanted a piece of Roxanne in that championship. Tiffany Stratton, Lyra Valkyria, I believe Stevie Turner said something too. So there's a lot of eyes on Roxanne Perez, not only for her health, but also heading into Stand and Deliver and who's going to be her opponent.
Absolutely. And it's a great question because I'm not sure who it'll be at this point. I don't know if they're going to pull the trigger on Tiffany Stratton. I know a lot of people are very, very high on Tiffany Stratton, so that's a possibility. This
was also, somebody else had brought this up to my attention too. I'm from Buffalo. I don't follow football, but I remember like Damar Hamlin, like a Buffalo Bill. A lot of people thought that, because that happened like just a month and a half ago, 2 months ago, that was kind of similar parallels to that. So Joseph makes a good point. I did see somebody brought that to my attention. I didn't even put two and two together at first, but it's kind of a similar.
Well, and to that end, I think
I know.
Right. I'm going to write this down because I got the feeling. All right.
Okay.
So let's just go here. Let's go here. I will tell you, in watching it, Damar Hamlin did not come to mind when I watched it. Naturally, the first thing that came to mind was her health. Is she okay?
Then you
Then
thought of Sean.
Right. Then I thought of
Yeah.
Sean, and that made sense. Here to me is the massive difference
Mhm.
between this and Damar Hamlin. First of all, obviously, Damar Hamlin, when he fell out, literally everything stopped,
Yeah.
and they couldn't pull anything back together. Here, we clearly went off air. Now, we could make reference to a couple of other moments where something of this serious nature happened where WWE didn't even like they cut away. They cut to other things.
Mhm.
They would not show us what was going on. So there's that. Now, the other thing I'm going to say, and I'm going to wherever this goes, it goes. I think sometimes this is the general thought of the culture, and that is we're always looking for something to be upset about. And this was something I never connected any of this to Damar Hamlin
Neither did
at
I
all.
until somebody
And
mentioned
so
it to me a couple hours ago.
right, and I just think sometimes people are always looking for something, and I'm like, this is not that. Trust me, there are enough things in this sport and in society to properly use our emotions on and to go full activist and, really talk about bad taste. I don't think this was that, particularly when we can immediately point it back to Shawn Michaels. When we point it back to that, and the other thing about this, which I think is neat, is reliving these Shawn Michaels moments are important because they have not been redone before. So we haven't had a bunch of people, doing the same kind of super kick that the Rockers did or anything like that. So I don't think this is the same thing. And I think, again, we need to, I don't want to borrow a phrase, but this is not the space for selective outrage, right?
Yeah.
Like, let this just be what it is. This isn't Damar. And here's the other piece. We could call this Damar Hamlin if WWE played this all the way to we followed her to the hospital, prayers up for her because this is a super serious situation. Nobody alluded to that at all. So I think we've got to kind of reserve our outrage for the spaces where it's really necessary. This isn't that.
Yeah, no, like I kind of literally like Joseph said, I didn't think of it at all until somebody literally pointed it out to me a couple hours ago. Again, I haven't been much on Twitter today, so I didn't even see the Damar Hamlin stuff until somebody told
Yeah.
me about it because we were talking about it. Yeah, so I don't know. I was no, don't be nervous to bring it up. I forgot that people had brought that
Yeah.
up. I didn't
Yeah,
put
no,
two
I
and
hadn't
two
heard it.
together, but
I hadn't heard it.
yeah,
This is my first of hearing it.
yeah,
But I mean, again, the parallels to those, it's much, much different.
yeah.
Much different. For instance, like I said, commentary went completely silent.
Yeah.
What happened at that NFL game with Damar Hamlin, the commentary team was very vocal. They
Mhm.
talked about the severity of the situation. They were instructing people like this is a very serious situation. And WWE, to their credit, historically, when there have been extremely serious situations happening, they have no problem telling you guys this is extremely serious. Like we're looking, they have no problem making
Yeah.
sure we understand the
Yeah.
severity of the
Like
situation.
the one example that comes to mind is obviously the Jerry Lawler heart
That's
attack
exactly
one.
what I
I feel
thought
like
about.
that they would have done that too. Granted, it was at the end
Right.
of the show, but I still think
Well, no, the Jerry
they
Lawler
would've
thing was in the middle of the show. But
No, I
to
mean,
what you were
sorry,
saying,
the Roxanne stuff was at the end of the show,
but they
granted.
would have, to your point, they
Yeah.
would have stressed the
Yeah.
serious nature of it
Yeah.
for sure. No doubt
That's a
about
good
that.
point. That's a good
Yeah.
point.
So
Bobby, thank you for joining us here too.
greetings, Bobby.
Yeah, again, it could be just, I guess I don't know where they go from here. There's a lot of people lining up that want to face Roxanne. I guess it would protect her to have her lose the title without actually losing the title if they want to call her up. But again, her reign just started. This feels
Right.
kind of sad and anticlimactic to end it,
Sure.
especially when the way she won it was so the opposite of anticlimactic. It was,
Right.
it was such a buzzworthy moment.
Right.
Granted, the circumstances are kind of bittersweet, but obviously they're invested in her. And I don't know. It kind of reminds me of also kind of that Rhea Ripley thing. She was so hot for a while. The crowd
Right.
was so invested in her, and then her kind of the ending of her reign was just so anticlimactic. Granted, I love
Right.
Charlotte Flair, but it was just like the payoff was not there and having
Yeah.
her lose it. And granted, this would be a different scenario, but it kind of draws some parallels to me. I don't know.
No, for sure, for sure. I think right now, again, NXT is really cooking, and I think NXT, speaking of the women's division, is certainly still very much rebuilding that
Yeah.
women's division to be in the image of what NXT's women's division has historically been. So I think it might be too soon to start having the call up conversation
Yeah.
for Roxanne. And let's remember, even if she is going to get called up, it's not required that she lose the NXT Women's Championship to do
Yeah.
that. I mean,
True.
when Paige showed
Paige
up, she was still the NXT Women's Champion.
for a
We've
bit.
seen
Yeah.
when Kevin Owens showed up, he was the NXT Men's Champion. When Karrion Kross
Mhm,
showed up, he was.
mhm.
So, I mean, like there are enough examples that say
Mhm.
when it's time, it's time. We don't have to stress it. But yeah, I think it's too early for that particular conversation.
Joseph, I will say, I don't know if I think we were going to talk about it last week, but we didn't have enough time. But
Mhm.
Zoe Stark appears to be on her way because, I mean, she had those great matches on main event. She was in the Royal
Sure.
Rumble.
Yep.
And then the week of the 25th and 26th, yeah, that
Mhm.
25th and 26th during WWE's house shows in Illinois, she was on both of those shows that she was making
Yes.
her WWE main roster live event debuted. She competed in
Mhm.
a fatal four-way match for the SmackDown Women's Championship. So
Right.
that appeared to be kind of a trial run of how she does in a main roster audience capacity. So if
Mhm.
it's not Roxanne, it looks like it's going to be Zoe Stark. Again, that's like far from confirmed, but
Yeah.
she's definitely getting on her way to being called up probably after Mania. But again,
Yeah.
who knows?
And to the point about nobody from this era of NXT has graduated to the main roster. Let's remember time frames here. NXT 2.0 began September of
Yeah.
2021. We're not dealing with 2 years
No.
yet. So
Yeah.
this isn't, it's not like, oh my God, they've been in NXT purgatory. Like
Yeah.
it's not that at all. This we really, and think about this.
Yeah. Indy
A-
Hartwell's I
I'd
think
be
it
game for Indy Hartwell.
yeah, she has been there the longest. She's been here since 2019.
Mhm.
She's been here
Mhm.
besides Kaden and Katana have been here longer
Right.
since, like, 2017, 2018, or
Right.
in Indy Hartwell's, but so those 3 have been here the longest. They're kind of the era before the pandemic. So
Right.
if anybody, I mean, it should be them, but it
Yeah.
appears that it's gonna be Zoe Stark, you know?
Which I'm not upset with Zoe Stark.
Yeah.
Zoe is
She's
amazing.
a vet too,
She yeah,
so
she that there's that. So it's interesting. I'm not alarmed at all that there hasn't been call-ups because really NXT 2.0 was literally like a clean slate
yeah.
for NXT, and a lot of the folks that had been just sitting in the performance center who had not performed yet started getting opportunities, you know. So we're just at that phase or we can start calling some folks stars in this new version of NXT. Then, of course, 2.0 switched back to kind of this hybrid
Yeah.
between black and gold and 2.0.
Mhm.
So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see.
I personally don't think Braun is ready for the main roster. But granted, I don't watch NXT enough to
Okay.
really fully know. I'm just kind of basing just off of it on his couple of instances on Raw that I've seen and a couple of his NXT matches that I've seen. I don't know if he could exist outside of having a championship. Is my fear.
Well,
I fear that he would get swallowed up and get lost in the shuffle. But I
uh,
don't know enough.
to that end, I will say that let's also remember that Braun has only been wrestling for barely 18 months.
Yeah. And
So,
most of it he's been champ.
right. He had that first, 6 to 8 months or so chasing the
Yeah.
NXT championship. But yeah, remember this time last year, he was already champion. He won
Yeah.
that title at like New Year's Evil starting
Yeah. He's
2022.
basically been
So,
champ for over a
right,
year.
that's 4 or 5
He
months.
had
Yeah,
that
that little
3 there was 3 weeks where he wasn't,
right.
but basically
Mhm.
he's been champ for like a full calendar year
Right.
altogether.
So this is so yeah, is he ready for the main roster yet? I don't know.
Oh,
I would say
mhm.
not yet. I say give him a few more months at least because to Ella's point, we need to see what he can do after a title
Yeah.
reign. and I don't mean for 3 or 4 weeks close to
Yeah.
WrestleMania. I mean, like, how will he exist having to chase Carmelo Hayes and not
Yeah.
being successful? That's where I think we're going to really get to see, because again, you're swimming in some deep, deep territory when you start talking about Raw or SmackDown for someone who's been in the game for 18 months.
Hmm.
That's a different ball
Yeah.
of wax at this
We,
point.
we don't know. And then when he was in the main roster, it was against the veteran Dolph Ziggler, who could
Sure.
easily carry him if
Right.
theoretically he wasn't ready. Again,
Right.
I feel like we need to see what can he deliver
Mhm.
outside of a championship reign. And again,
Yeah.
that's assuming he maybe loses to Carmelo Hayes, that match is coming
Stand
up now.
Yep,
But
stand
we'll
deliver.
see. Resident Evil, thank you for joining us. Yeah, Joseph,
Mhm.
like I said, yeah, I mean, Dolph was pretty much there to kind of elevate. Granted, Dolph won, but Dolph was also there to elevate Braun Breaker
Absolutely.
himself. He's only been wrestling 2.5 years. He had one indie match, and WWE signed him. Yeah, so he's been basically under the WWE umbrella basically his whole career.
Right.
So what can he do beyond, he was so early on, but now that he's had this run as champion, what can
Mhm.
he do now? Because he's not the same person he was when he came in,
Nope.
obviously, but he's
Right.
gained the experience from champion. What can he do now? How has he grown? We need to
Yeah.
see his growth after championship, and NXT in developmental is the perfect way to do that. Or like do the Zoe Stark route, give him some live
Mhm.
events, see how the main roster crowd reacts to that, and it's not on
Right.
television. Slowly
That's
integrate. I mean, granted, the Karrion Cross thing was different, but they kind of just propelled him when he was
Mhm.
NXT champ and didn't really slowly integrate it. And you see how that turned out.
Right. Well, then they also tried to change his character when he came over
Yeah,
too, which is
true,
a whole
true,
another thing.
true.
Now, I will say this, if we're going to talk about folks who are ready, who I think is more ready than Braun Breaker, is Grayson Waller.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think Grayson Waller
Kind
is
of,
just, I
yeah.
mean,
Kind of
he's got it
segued. Yeah.
all. Yeah, he's got the look,
Mhm.
he's got the talk, he knows how to be a great heel. He can handle all of that. So I definitely think that Grayson Waller, if we're going to talk about folks who are ready to go, he's ready to go. And perhaps what happened last night leading into Stand and Deliver is kind of the segue to that, because here it
Mhm.
is. He's been in this program with Shawn Michaels. This kind of culminated last night on an episode of the Grayson
Mhm.
Waller Effect. And then in challenging Shawn Michaels, Shawn is like, I'd like to do it, but I got somebody who wants to do it more.
Yeah.
In comes Johnny Gargano.
Receipts.
Oh my gosh, let's remember Johnny Gargano was literally retiring from,
Yeah.
we thought, wrestling, period, because his
Yeah.
contract was up in
Yeah.
WWE.
Yeah.
And in his last conversation with the WWE Universe,
Mhm.
who spoils it but this guy,
Yeah.
Grayson Waller, as you could see, getting ready to put a chair to him. And it was the last we saw of Gargano for months before he showed up again on Monday Night Raw. So this is great. And, when you start talking about what lots of long-term wrestling fans like to call long-term storytelling, this is beautiful, because most people kind of forgot that. They
Yeah.
forgot it all together. But it's all the pieces are falling in place, and I love it. And the fact that you're going to put Waller in there against Gargano says to me how ready Waller is to be on the main roster.
Yeah, I agree. Like Grayson, I mean, he has the total package. Granted, like he had been wrestling much longer than a Braun
Mhm.
Breaker. He was on
Sure.
the Australian indie scene for a long, long time
Mhm.
as Maddie. So like again, a lot of people compare him to the Miz, but he like has that extra oomph, like
Oh
he's a
yeah.
great heel. He's great on the mic.
Mhm.
Could they have done this? Could they have Johnny just returned in an NXT capacity to begin with? Sure, but it's
Mhm.
also not out of the realm of possibility now to just see main roster stars just pop up like
Sure.
we saw the New Day do, we saw Bailey do, Sonya
Right.
Deville.
Right.
Will this we only saw a New Day there for what, 2 months maybe?
Mhm.
This could just be until Stand and Deliver, could just maybe be a month. Dolph Ziggler
Sure.
last year was there for
Right.
like a month and a half
Right.
maybe.
Right.
So it's not as random anymore. It's kind of like expect the unexpected. It doesn't happen all
Right.
the time, but it's been
Mhm.
happening fairly frequently.
Yeah.
So I think it gives him something to do, because frankly, they were kind of floundering him on Raw. There was
I
nothing really
agree.
substantial. His momentum had been kind of waning. Yes, he still has great matches and stuff,
Right,
but
right.
his momentum is kind of waned in there. And they
Yes.
had that story going on with him and Miz and Dexter.
It
At
felt
least that
weird.
was something. It was something, but more so,
Mhm.
it's now he's not really involved in any stories. He's just kind of there where he
Right,
shouldn't be. He
right.
should be having these stories like he's about to have with Grayson Waller. So I
Mhm.
see this as an asset personally, and it gets more in people. Granted, the time is going to be like 9 a.m. Pacific time, but I feel like it gets more people, even more people, like how Dolph Ziggler was last year. Johnny
Totally.
Gargano is that this year,
Absolutely.
for Stand and Deliver. So it also brings more eyes, maybe.
Win after win after
Yeah.
win, and I love
I
this for
I think
NXT.
it's
I
gonna be
really do.
good. I think
It's gonna
it's
be
really
really
gonna
good.
be good.
Mhm.
So I mean, we'll see. Johnny has at least Johnny does have something to do WrestleMania weekend. Yes,
Mhm.
like we said, he didn't really have any stories
Right.
going on really after that story with the Miz ended. So, yes, Natalia was also on NXT too. She was there
That's
for
right.
about 2 months.
Working
Then
with
kind of
Cora
left.
Jade.
It could
Yeah.
just be this. It's kind of not it's not an awkward transition. It just kind
No.
of happens. So then we don't even ask like, why are
Right.
they just randomly back on Raw again? We don't even ask those
Right.
anymore. Those questions.
That's right.
But I kind of wanted to talk about still on the topic of not NXT, but I mean
Mania
talking about
weekend for
Raw,
sure.
Mania
Yeah.
weekend. Oh,
Mhm.
it's gonna be a marquee six woman tag team matchup,
Mhm.
that of Damage Control and WWE Hall of Famers Trish Stratus, Lita, and of course big time Becky
Mhm.
Lynch. Trish's first Mania since 2011. Lita's only second WrestleMania ever. I just found that out. She's not wrestled at WrestleMania since 2002, since it was
Wow.
against Jazz and Trish. This is only Lita's second
Yes.
WrestleMania ever, which is crazy to think about. I think it's Trish's like sixth or something like that.
Right,
But
right.
that's insane to think about. It's obviously Bailey's first Mania since 2020, the
Mhm.
pandemic. Then the next year she was kind of the host, and
Right.
then she was injured the year after that.
Mhm.
Dakota Kai was on the kickoff show in 2018.
Mhm.
This is her main show debut. It's Io
Yes.
Sky's WrestleMania debut in general. So
Mhm.
a lot of things for a lot of people. And it keeps Becky Lynch involved in the
Yes.
title picture.
Mhm.
Um, we will be getting to that in a moment, Nikki, because that was also part of this. But before we get to this, like I think I was talking about it. Think it was here. It was
Mhm.
somewhere. I was talking about this Ronda factor. We'll get to that in a moment. But
Okay.
what was? I mean, we all expected it, but what was your reaction when it was finally made official?
I really liked it. I liked it. I mean, you're dealing with 6 marquee stars here. What Bailey and Damage Control have been able to do since their return at SummerSlam, they've really stayed at the top of the women's division, no matter what was going on. And then to have Becky involved with these legends like Lita and Trish, who still easily get it done, this is gonna be great. And if anything, it's so funny how over the years, people have talked good or bad about how WWE has leaned on legends to kind of come back and help Mania happen. To me, the fact that we are now pulling on women's legends is a good thing.
Mhm.
And we're getting them involved in some historic spaces that they weren't involved in before. Lita being a women's tag champion, something that was not even available to her
No.
while she was wrestling. That's awesome. And then putting Trish in the mix of that is fantastic. I love this. I think it's great. Now, I'm sure there are some who are saying, well, what does this do for the women's tag team titles? To that, I want to remind people that I believe it was 2 years ago at that WrestleMania where on night 1 they had like a qualifying match, and then night 2
Yeah.
they had a women's tag title match. I think it's still possible to have a women's tag title match on the other night,
Yes,
whatever
so
that falls into play.
that's what I was going to get to because
Yeah.
again, I think it was on here where I kept, I was so excited for this match to be announced, but I couldn't
Mhm.
forget about the Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler factor. It
Mhm.
appears, though, that what you just said is going to be the answer, where apparently whoever is women's tag team champions is going to be wrestling twice
Mhm.
WrestleMania weekend.
Mm.
Again, we don't know what night this match is going to happen on, but
Right.
whether it be Damage Control or, well, assuming, again, we don't know. I would assume this would be happening on night one, but whoever is the WWE Women's Tag Team Champions is, according to Wrestling Observer Radio, still
Mhm.
going to be wrestling the other night against Shayna Baszler and Ronda Rousey. So whoever the tag champs are heading into WrestleMania are going to be wrestling both nights,
Mhm.
reportedly. The other
Mhm.
night is going to be, so it'll either be Trish and Becky or
Mhm.
Dakota Kai and Io Sky going against Ronda Rousey and Shayna Baszler the other night, reportedly anyway.
Mhm.
Um, so I know Ronda is dealing with an arm injury.
Mhm.
PW Torch reported that, but they're expecting her to be back in time for Mania. They said it's a non-serious injury, but obviously she was wearing the arm sling last week on SmackDown.
Right.
But reportedly it's not a serious issue, and they expect her to be back at Mania. Again, injuries are always so uncertain.
Mhm.
You never know. She could re-aggravate it again, but
Right.
she's supposed to be back by Mania. So
Okay.
they haven't set anything up for now. So if anything happens in the next week or two, there's nothing right now that's leading anything Ronda Rousey, Shayna Baszler into Mania. But as of now, whoever the tag champs are heading in are supposed to face Ronda and Shayna on the other night. So I don't
Right.
know.
We will see. We
I
will see.
mean,
Lots still to
Nikki,
be determined.
to be honest, Shayna is going to be carrying the whole team, to be honest. You're
Well,
you're not wrong. Um, let her take out Becky and Lita real quick and get her revenge on Bex. I mean, yeah. I just assuming that this match is still going to happen, Ronda gets cleared.
mhm.
How do you I guess the lead up would just be they attack everyone night one, assuming this 6-woman happens?
They
My
could.
question is how do you lead into that? Is it announced beforehand that the tag titles are going to be on night 2 per se? Or is it going to be a spontaneous thing where Ronda and Sheena show up on night 1 and attack them? I just don't know how they coordinate this is my thing.
Yeah.
How
I
do
mean,
they get it to make sense?
they could pull it off like they did 2 years ago, where they have a qualifying or number 1 contenders match on night
True.
1,
Okay,
and then
fair.
which would make perfect sense.
Yeah,
And then they could
fair.
end up there in night 2, so they get 2 matches out of it, which I think would
Yeah.
be cool.
And I think if Becky and Lita hold on to it, it would
Mhm.
sort of satisfy people's wish that they've been wanting to have Ronda and Becky meet again. It would be in a,
Mhm.
in a, in a not one-on-one capacity, but it was sort
Right.
of satisfy that.
Mhm.
But again, Damage Control could easily regain them back because there's been rumors of Trish turning heel. Again,
Oh,
the path to this is so uncertain, but
that's what we
um
love.
we do, but
Yeah.
also, like, sometimes it's a curse kind of knowing what the end result is, but you don't know the path to get there. So
Right.
that's like, ugh, so as they say, we just gotta tune in. Um,
Absolutely.
so we'll see. We will see, but I'm excited. It's so weird that Lita's a champ in 2023.
I'm telling you, it's wild. It is wild to
Would
see.
people care which 4
About the
horsewomen? Which 4? The
mm,
MMA or WWE?
well, and
I
that's a great question.
Well, technically, Bailey is a I think he means MMA because Bailey is in Damage Control. She can't wrestle herself.
Well,
Uh,
okay.
so I think
And
you mean the MMA for horsewomen.
but we only have 2 of them here.
Marina Shafir is contracted to AEW too. So
Mhm.
I don't
Mhm.
I think again that is also past its window of opportunity to
Yeah.
be able to do. Or I mean, it never say never, but it's definitely not going to happen at this WrestleMania.
Right.
And by then, knowing WWE's track records, Damage Control is probably going to be broken up by then. By the point it might even be possible to happen.
That's possible too.
But we'll see.
Yeah.
Just because their track record of breaking up tag teams. But you
Well,
mentioned Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, speaking of tag teams, it's probably a good segue
Yeah.
to a conversation that Soraya is having right
Yeah.
now in honor of International Women's Day
Yeah.
today. She hopped on to the socials and a few other places, and she responded to a tweet that AEW released. AEW put out a tweet celebrating International Women's Day, and Soraya's response to it was, quote, "The perfect way to celebrate would be to bring in women's tag titles." So yeah, now back in 2022, of course, Tony Khan was asked about this, and he didn't really see it as something that would be happening in the immediate future. He did not respond to this particular tweet, but yeah, Soraya thinks it'd be a great idea to have women's tag team championships in AEW.
Maybe in like 5 years, but not certainly not anytime soon. And I love Soraya. This
Mhm.
company is just not we're still struggling to get more than one women's match on Dynamite and Rampage period, which
Mhm.
means by default these theoretical championships would be relegated to Dark or Dark Elevation, where most of the matches are only 1 to 2 minutes. The main event is maybe 5 to 6, but still, it's not a lot of time to even build an ounce of credibility for these theoretical championships when the matches are so minuscule in time to even build them up to try and elevate them, get some credibility, some reputation behind them that people take them seriously. So I think first, I mean, maybe 5 years down the line, yeah, it's kind of the same discussion of, the all women's pay-per-view thing.
Mhm.
I think, maybe down the line, but first they need to focus on building up the women's division that they have, the singles, whatever. They need
Mhm.
to work on building that up by itself
Yeah.
and make progress in that first before we can even think about adding another championship. They need to get a hold on their I'm gonna be honest, I don't watch Rampage. When was the last time we saw Jade Cargill?
You were reading my mind. It has been quite some time
Yeah.
since we've seen Jade Cargill, the TBS Women's
Yes.
Champion, on our television screens.
Okay. So I'm
Matter of
not
fact, there's been
crazy.
no, you're not crazy. There's been more talk about Jade Cargill outside of the ring than there has been
2 to 3 weeks.
inside of the ring. Jade Cargill, who, yeah, there's more talk and more excitement about her potentially going to Japan than there is about her being on AEW television. So to that end,
This too,
uh,
Bobby. This too.
yes,
This too. They
I
need to work
agree.
on Ring of Honor is just starting up.
Mhm.
They need to first focus on revamping and revitalizing their own regular women's division surrounding the
Correct.
championships they already have in existence.
Mhm.
Obviously, they've been focusing on the AEW Women's Championship, but outside of that picture, we haven't seen Jade Cargill in weeks.
Right.
The mid there is no mid card on. There really is no outside of a championship atmosphere. There's literally nothing on Dynamite or Rampage. That's kind of mainly relegated to Dark or Dark Elevation. So first, they need to work on revamping, revitalizing their own women's division that they already have and championships they already have. Then maybe once they hopefully establish more level up, then
Mhm.
maybe we can once they make progress on what they have in existence, then maybe we can talk about introducing a theoretical second championship. But yeah, ROH, yeah, ROH too. That's a whole other division
Mhm.
in and of itself. Yeah,
Yeah.
Lady Frost and Willow,
Mhm.
great. Again,
Yeah.
their second one is airing tonight, I believe. Tomorrow
Tomorrow
night, I
night.
should say.
Mhm. That's right.
So they're just getting the ball rolling with Ring of
Yeah.
Honor.
Yeah.
Maybe in a couple of years, but in the next 2 years, I don't foresee that happening at least.
Yeah. No, well, not if it's gonna be managed well. I think
No.
I
No.
think you nailed it. It's
No.
definitely, you
Not to
know
say they definitely have the numbers for it. Don't get me
Sure.
wrong. They have the
Sure.
depth there, but there's
Mhm.
not enough times. They don't provide enough time slots for the women on Dynamite and Rampage.
Yeah.
Um so like I just fear that if they even thought about it, it would automatically get relegated to dark elevation. And there you're doing titles no justice because you get maybe 1-2 minute matches at most. There's the one match that's longer, that's like 5 or 6 minutes typically.
Mhm.
Again, still though, you're not doing much justice to it. So
I would agree.
maybe that's just me. I don't
No,
know.
not just you.
I love
It's not just
Soraya,
you.
but I don't think not yet. Not yet.
Yeah. Yeah,
We need to
it's
see Jade Cargill again. That's what we need right now.
agreed. I mean, and who would eat? I can't even put my mind around.
Well, they keep breaking
who would
everybody up too.
I was gonna
Or
say, who would even compete for those tag titles? Like,
right now, it would be the women. The only teams really. Anna Jay, and I mean, you have Anna and Tay Conti, but the
mhm,
rest of the teams per se are more so focused around the main event title picture, that being
right,
Soraya. That seems to be leading to maybe a blood and guts match, but mainly the teams right now are all relegated around the main Jamie Hayter, the women's champion, not like a
right,
separate thing, you
right.
know?
Mhm.
Yeah, the Renegade Twins, but again, I mean, they could, but they're not contracted to the company, you know? Um, I don't know. I don't know.
Interesting times for sure.
We'll see.
Yeah, we will definitely see. But yeah, that's what Saraya would like
Yeah.
for her International Women's Day gift from AEW.
Speaking of technically international, technically not. I don't really know
Oh, the
anymore.
controversy around this. Oh boy. It would here's okay, let me say it and then let me tell people how they should have said it and it wouldn't have been controversial. So the news that dropped today
Yeah.
is that the WWE has announced where the next premium live event
Yeah.
after WrestleMania will be. It
Yeah.
will be Backlash, no longer referred to as WrestleMania Backlash. It is just Backlash, and it will be hosted by Bad Bunny in Puerto Rico, San Juan, Puerto Rico, specifically on Saturday, May the 6th. Now, this will be the first premium live event from WWE in Puerto Rico since January of 2005. That's amazing. But here's
Yeah.
where the controversy comes in because people have been
Yes.
citing that between this and then the King and Queen of the Ring and then Money in the
Money in the
Bank,
bank.
that there are 3
Yes.
international pay-per-views. So let me just
Yeah.
give a quick geographic.
Oh, I did not mean to do that. I'm so sorry. I've been
There you
thinking
go.
about
So much for
this.
the lesson. So here we go with a quick geography and history lesson.
Yeah.
In case people didn't know, Puerto Rico is technically a part of the United States.
Yeah.
It is not a state. It is a province / territory. So it is a part of the United States. So it is not international. Now, if people wanted to say it is the first, or these are pay-per-views or premium live events that are not happening in the continental United States,
Yeah.
you would have been accurate. There
Yeah.
would not have been a problem. But this is not an international
Yeah.
pay-per-view. Just need to remind the people of that. Puerto Rico is very much still a part of the United States. Now, some
Yeah.
folks in Puerto Rico want to secede, but as of right now, they are still part of the United States. You know.
Yeah, I didn't even realize that. Yeah, that's 3. Yes, out of the continental United States, that's 3 pay-per-view / premium live events back to back to back. So
This
this
is
was
pretty awesome.
This is May 6th. Obviously,
Mhm.
King and Queen of the Ring is May 27th in Saudi
Right.
Arabia.
Mhm.
And then in July, early July, it's gonna be Money in the Bank.
That's
And
right.
then after Mania, the next one that's
It's
in the
SummerSlam.
States is Detroit on August 5th. So that's literally
Mhm.
4 months between, which is crazy. So
So
the
get to
question is, though,
WrestleMania.
I was talking about this. What do they do in September then? Because Clash at the Castle was international. Do they bring back Hell in a Cell? Do they move Extreme Rules to September? What do they do in September? I don't know.
Who knows? You know, they're out here planning all kinds of wild
Yeah.
things. So yeah, let's see what's on the schedule if they at least have listed what's on the schedule.
I don't think they
So
have yet for September.
yeah, they
I
have not
personally
as
think it
of
might
yet.
be Extreme Rules, and I think Hell in a Cell might go back to
To
October.
October, that would make sense.
But again, I don't know. So because obviously Clash at the Castle was last September.
Right.
So again,
Right.
Hell in a Cell last year was in June. Granted, before that, it was normally in like October or September, so it could just be relegated back to the September October slot. So
Yeah, who
we'll see.
knows? Who
We'll see.
knows? This will be very interesting to see though. And there are parts of me that wonder after the SummerSlam, well, who knows? Let's also remember that we actually had a 2-month break on pay-per-views from Survivor Series through Royal
That's
Rumble.
true. That's
So there
true.
was no December one, there was no early January
I
one.
can't. I mean, it's possible. Oh, I don't know. Would they do that again from August to October? But then they would
I
have a
don't
2-month
know.
break again after
And then
My thing though is I fear they might have another Saudi show later in the year around November,
they usually do 2 shows.
October. Yeah.
Yeah, so November
Mm.
makes sense. That
So
makes
I
sense.
guess they could just have one in September, and make the October one the Saudi show, but like
They could.
but we still
Who
have
knows?
Extreme Rules and Hell in a Cell.
We do?
So I think it'll be interchangeably between those 2, but who
Yeah.
knows?
Interesting times.
We will end today with
Mhm.
some
It's wrestling facts. Yeah.
Yeah.
with some vintage wrestling facts. Take it away, Gerard.
All right. Well, let's throw our ones in the air to acknowledge the bloodline and the great Anoa'i family because it was this day 50 years ago. Wow. I had to think about that. 50 years ago today, Afa and Sika, the guys who kind of started this dynasty, known as the Wild Samoans, they defeated Jules and Chief Jay Strongbow to become the WWE Tag Team Champions. That's kind of a big deal because if you ever got to see the Samoans and go back on YouTube or the WWE Network on Peacock, they were as intimidating as the day is long. And so, this whole dynasty went all the way back some 50 years ago, where today they became tag team
I think it
champions.
was
Speaking of the
40. Wasn't it 83?
83, oh,
It'd
40.
be 40.
What is this?
Yeah.
It's been a
It's
long
okay.
day. I'm
It's okay.
sorry.
It's okay.
40 years ago. Sheesh. Okay. Yikes. All right. Well, 40 years ago. There goes my math degree out the window.
It's okay.
All right. 1987. Speaking of tag teams, WWE had a tag team tournament. It was not televised. It was a house show in East Rutherford, New Jersey. Number of tag teams involved, but the finals saw the Hart Foundation, Bret the Hitman Hart and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, defeat a team called the Can-Am Connection. Now, that's the team of Rick Martel and Tom Zink. Rick Martel, former AWA world champion, would go on in the WWE to be known as the Model Rick Martel. Tom Zink, on the other hand, would end up, obviously, he spent time in the AWA, would go back to WCW and be known as the Z-Man. Very different fortunes for the two of them. Let's move forward to 1999. This is a different time in pro wrestling. The heyday of Monday Night Raw certainly was going on during this period that we call the Attitude Era. But in 1999 is where we started seeing the decline of WCW Nitro. And it could be in part due to this particular show that was held on this day in 1999. They were coming out of Worcester, Mass. And at the time, the booker was a guy named Kevin Nash. And so let's remember, Nitro was a 3-hour show at this point. Kevin Nash somehow thought it would be an amazing idea that we have the first hour of the show involve absolutely no wrestling. Yeah, there was no wrestling in the first hour of the show. Instead, you had Ric Flair in a conversation with Arn Anderson. You had Kevin Nash in a conversation with Hulk Hogan. You had Conan debuting a rap video and then a highlight reel of Lex Luger, all in hour number one. Very weird. Now, in hour number 2, there were actually some matches, and then the main event, and this ages really well. The main event in 1999 on Nitro was Ric Flair versus Goldberg. And of course, they fought to a no contest draw. Insert your own joke right here. All right. Let's fast forward to a very little known fact. In 2008, There was an organization called JAPW. You don't hear much about them these days, but they were pretty important. They were involved in New Jersey specifically. And this organization did some cool things. They're called Jersey All Pro Wrestling. Now, you may not know their names now, but I'll just tell you about the names on this show. You'll see this kind of aged pretty well. The main event of this show in 2008 saw a guy named Kenny Omega defeat Low Key to become the new JAPW heavyweight champion. Now, a lot of this event was held inside of a steel cage, and apparently also there was a tag match for the tag titles that saw Homicide and Hernandez, LAX in some spaces.
Wow.
They defeated a very interesting team, Samoa Joe and Teddy Hart.
Teddy Hart.
Teddy Hart. Yeah. Quite the tag team. I never would have seen that coming. That happened in 2008.
This.
There might be one floating around on YouTube about this happening at Caged Fury. Moving then to something that may not have aged so well. On this day in 2010, on Monday Night Raw, who would ever think that we would say these words? Vince McMahon pinned John Cena. It happened in a no disqualification handicap gauntlet match. Now, apparently Cena had a lot of people to fight. He fought McMahon, but he ended up fighting Batista, Drew McIntyre, Jack Swagger, Mark Henry, and Vladimir Kozlov. You guys might remember him. Yeah. Now, on the same day, let's talk about things that didn't age well. On the exact same day, Impact was held. Now, this was, let me just pause and say, during this weird era in 2010 where Impact had gotten this great TV deal, somebody thought it was a smart idea to go head-to-head with WWE, much like Nitro did with Raw. Probably not the best move for Impact. And one of the things that they did on this night in 2010, remember, 2010, saw the in-ring return, get this, of Hulk Hogan.
Yes.
And Ric Flair. Yes. Ric Flair just keeps showing up in this.
This was the era. My first episode I watched of Impact was 3 months before this. 2 months, 2.5 months before this. So this was literally my early days of TNA Impact Wrestling. I remember this.
Yeah. Flair and Hogan back in the ring, and it ended up with them being in a tag match.
Yes.
Abyss teams with Hulk Hogan against AJ Styles and Ric Flair in a no DQ match, and Abyss and Hulk Hogan win the match. Pretty intriguing stuff. Perhaps even more intriguing, and I'm really not sure how this one aged. Rob Van Dam, RVD, pinned Sting that night in 9 seconds. Yeah.
What did he hit? I don't know. What move did he hit?
I need to go back.
That's not enough time for a frog splash.
It's not. And for RVD and Sting, 9 seconds isn't fair. That's just not fair. Last thing on the list today, this day in 2000. That was 3 years ago. I really can't count, folks.
He means, guys. He's getting his
God.
2000. 3 years ago? I would not be on this show right now, sir.
I've had it's been a rough week, guys. So I'm sorry. Wow, this is terrible. I'm about to lose everything. This is terrible. Okay. All right. So 3 years ago, 2020, the Elimination Chamber took place. It was held in Philly. Mm-hmm. And there were a few things that happened. There were 2 Elimination Chamber matches. One of them was a tag team Elimination Chamber match where John Morrison and The Miz retained their tag team titles. Yeah, remember them. Mm-hmm. Just not all that long ago. There was an Intercontinental title match where, believe it or not, there was a handicap match in this one. Braun Strowman is defending against Cesaro, Sami Zayn, and Shinsuke Nakamura. Sami Zayn gets the pin and becomes the new Intercontinental Champion. And what a difference 3 years makes. Just 3. Shayna Baszler this night was in the main event in the Women's Chamber and had the most historic women's performance in that chamber to date, as she eliminated all of her competitors, which included Sarah
Asuka.
Logan, Ruby Riott, Natalia, Liv Morgan, and Asuka. Yeah. Now, this is also significant because it was the last WWE pay-per-view with fans in attendance, because shortly thereafter would come the COVID-19 pandemic, which would change pro wrestling for the foreseeable future as we knew it. Yeah, it was pretty crazy. And then we kind of remember that lead up to it. You guys remember when Shayna bit a hole in Becky's back, and like it was pretty gory and nasty and gross and crazy, and she still lost in front of no audience at that year's WrestleMania. And those are your vintage wrestling facts.
Oh yeah, this would be insert video here.
It's wrestling facts. Yeah.
Kane. We miss you, Kane.
We do miss you, Kane. Yes, we do.
But of course, I mean, thank you for everybody for joining us here. We'll be ending in a few minutes, but obviously, WWT Live is not the only show that Women's Wrestling Talk has, because we are the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. We have a few more shows you might want to know a little bit more about.
Hey peeps, TK Trinidad here, boss lady of Women's Wrestling Talk. And I want to say thank you so much for watching, because you've got millions of options. Plus, you don't have to worry about sharing your password to check us out. But while you're here, hopefully you know we have so many more shows to watch, like Turnbuckle Glam, Raw post-show, WoW post-show, AEW Dynamite post-show, Women's Wrestling Army post-show, NXT post-show, Impact Wrestling post-show, AEW Rampage and SmackDown Live post-show, On the Scroll, WWT Live, plus all of our interviews with the hottest women's wrestlers in the game. Make sure that you like, comment, and subscribe. Check out our website at www.talkpod.com and follow us on all social media platforms at www.talkpod, and make sure to spread the word. That means send this to the group chat. Yes, even the person with the green bubble. Thanks again so much for watching Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. Ciao for now.
That's right. As TK put it perfectly, we have a bunch of post shows. Tonight we have our AEW Dynamite post show, so stay tuned for that. Before we head out of here, Gerard, please let the people know where they can find you on your social medias.
Of course, you can find me at Bonnerfied on all of the socials, Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, and all the places. You can check out my commentary work on Southern Honor Wrestling on IWTV. We just dropped a brand new show late last week, so check that out. You can also check out my work on Battle Slam on Fight TV, then at the Nightmare Factory and Championship District Wrestling on YouTube as well. You can check out the merch as well at prowrestlingtees.com/Bonnerfied. And of course, I am right here every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday.
And he's you're an award winner too, I believe.
Oh, yeah, that's true. Yeah.
You are.
I am. That's what
you
they
can
say.
find me on Twitter. The easiest way is where I'm most active, which is on Twitter at It's Ella J. If Twitter isn't down at the moment, it's because I truly never know every time I log in anymore, which is really sad because it's my favorite platform. But anyways, you can follow me there at It's Ella J. If you go to the link in my bio, all my links to my podcast and writing are all there in one convenient place. And don't forget to, of course, follow Women's Wrestling Talk at WW Talk Pod on all the socials. Yes, the three time. Of course, thank you all for joining us here for this Wednesday edition of WWT Live. We will be back on Friday. You know, Dynamite's tonight, the fallout of AEW Revolution. I'm sure a bunch is going to go down. Powerhouse Hobbs versus Wardlow, although Wardlow got his title stolen and all of his gear stolen out of his car. His car was broken into, which I found out a couple hours ago. Yeah, somebody broke into his car, took all of his gear, his boots, the title. So I don't know what the game plan is going to be for tonight because he has this title defense. So we'll see what happens tonight. I'm sure we'll talk about it on Friday. So that was Gerard's genuine reaction. So we'll see what happens. Thank you all for joining us. Of course, this has been Women's Wrestling Talk, the #1 women's wrestling show on the planet. We'll see you Friday. Also, that was in unison. Love to see that.
Yes.
Women's Wrestling Talk, the number one women's wrestling show on the planet.